Hello and welcome to another episode of Connecting with Kinetic. I'm your host, Jake, and today I'm joined by Sami from Dinero. How are you, Sami?
Hello, Jake. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Everyone's great, I assume. The market is as sparkling, as beautiful as it's ever been. Nice sideways movement for the past few months. It's been really invigorating. Nobody's been upset or bored with that at all.
Well, hopefully you don't curse it here. I don't know when you're going to post this. Maybe you post this and everything's down 20%. So,
yeah. Well, I think if that happens, everybody would be okay with it because, yeah, it's been a bit of a boring market lately. Not very exciting. Everybody, was hyped for October. That is close to passing. Here's hoping for Upvember. And maybe ups to December. I don't know how many ups we can put into months.
early,
We'll see.
yeah. There's too many over variations, right? In October, there's not enough up variations.
Yeah, maybe we can fix that. But before we get into the serious issues of religion and politics, let's talk about crypto stuffs, specifically what Dinero is doing. So on the Dinero website, it says that Dinero is a suite of products that scale yield for protocols and users. Now, can you break that down for us, or in layman's terms, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think that the Ethereum staking ecosystem has become very tribal, almost as it is with L1s, in the sense where everyone is trying to push their solution onto you. Hey, you should use that, you should use RETH, and then you should use this restaking platform over this restaking platform, and that outputs this LOT and not this LOT. And in at the crux of all of this, right? The users might be opinionated on wanting one asset over another, but in terms of being an infrastructure provider, this is not what L1s, L2s, institutions are looking for when they're looking to spin up their staking solution, right? They want something that's native to them. They want something that is safe, secure, easy to explain, and don't necessarily want to give up all that brand value of making a move in the space by feeling like they have to go with one of the leaders in any of those staking, restaking verticals, right? So what we're doing is, detaching brand from that. And essentially what we have here is the Paxos of LSTs, right? Where different protocols, different institutions, which I'm sure we'll get into, can work directly with us. They can spin up their own native ETH staking infrastructure to provide native staking for their clients if you're an institution, or for your users if you're a chain. And really just skip all the unnecessary extra steps where you're leaking value to others, and offer it direct to your users.
So if we could encapsulate that, what does the arrival of Dinero mean for the Flare network?
Right. Well, the nice part is that our move to Flare here, our expansion to Flare, is actually less about us as the Dinero core team coming on, and more so a direct integration and direct collaboration with the whole Flare ecosystem, building out Flare ETH, right?
And so you pronounce it Flare ETH. It's not FLRETH.
Well, I guess it depends how you want to spell it, right? I think FLRETH is easier on people's tongues. It's easier on people's eyes, but Flare ETH is easier on people's tongues. So okay, call it whatever you want.
FLRETH was not considered.
Well, if the people want it, we can name it that. But I think
I think this is important. I mean, if we're going to canonize this, I think this is the first time a lot of people are going to be hearing about FLRETH. I'd prefer FLRETH.
True. I mean, FLRETH is actually, it sounds like a flurry almost, right?
Yeah.
It sounds enticing. Okay, let's do FLRETH.
All right, thank you. I appreciate me being able to just push that on you.
Okay. Well, someone in the group chat said FETH, and I was like, dude, we can't do FETH.
No, you can't do Fed.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Well, look,
Get
like,
rid of that guy. Gone.
FLRETH, right?
FLRETH.
You know, when you're building out a DeFi ecosystem, or even, you know, consumer-based ecosystem, infrastructure-based ecosystem, whatever it is, right? You the traditional monolithic way of like launching a chain is saying, hey, we're partnering with layer 0, we're doing our own native bridge, whatever, we're bringing WETH to the chain, and then everything is done in WETH because that's how it's done on mainnet, right? But L2s and L1s, they exist in this stage now where we can actually like push the needle in terms of innovation. And because staking is such a core component of Ether now, while it might not be reflected on the L1 itself, right? Why can't we, you know, bring on native yield directly into the chain itself without having to depend on any third party or anything, and have people build around that when they want to use ETH, obviously, right? So that, you know, everything is like natively yielding. Users are just seeing their ETH wallet grow, and the UX like comes down significantly to where it's actually easier to use ETH and the entire ecosystem of all the use cases of ETH on Flare than it is to actually do it on mainnet, because it's yielding by default, right?
Sure. So if you were going to explain this to a caveman, how exactly would users, our lovely Flare bunnies, I like to call them, how exactly would they interact with FLRETH, and what's that process look like for them?
Right. It's really it's really as simple as you as a user deciding on if you want to opt into FLRETH, right? And what you have to decide on as a user is, do I trust the following risks, right? Do I trust layer 0, right? Because that's obviously a core component for us. Do I trust the beacon chain yield, right? And do I fully understand how staking yield works, right? And those are like the three things that you should like really like familiarize yourself with. And we can talk a bit about each of those different components after this. But those are like the three things you should really like familiarize yourself with when you're deciding whether you want to opt into this program or not, right? ETH on Flare is still, it's not FLRETH, but it's still ETH on Flare, right? But if you are looking for, you know, to hold your ETH on Flare, then like opting into FLRETH is like the simplest solution you have, right? Where it's like this natively issued asset, there's no other counterparties involved, and your ETH balance goes up over time, right? Because of the yield coming from the beacon chain, right? Yeah, that's how I would explain it to a caveman.
Okay, no mini moons. I noticed there was a lot of you had a lot of connecting things and contractions. You know, I was expecting a bit more. Me go on Magic Box, but I think the non-caveman audience I have will appreciate it.
Well, you know, like real caveman, right? Real caveman that maybe doesn't understand English, right? You bring ETH to Flare, right? And you do whatever you want on Flare with that ETH, right? Now you click button before you bring the ETH to Flare, and the ETH you have on Flare goes up in nominal value.
Honestly, I think that was probably helpful to some people. So thank you for that. Going into what you were saying as far as, you know, the three trusts, as you put it, I think the most interesting one is that third one, which is whether or not you know, not only trust, but understand how the staking mechanism works and where that value comes from. Could you go a bit more into detail about how value is accumulated?
Sure. I bring that issue up because I feel like it's an issue that a lot of people get burned on, right?
Sure.
Where, you know, they see I'm gonna put in $1 here, and by the end of the year I'll have $1.20, right? And the reason I say it's important for people to understand that is because this is a volatile a volatile yield, right? It goes up and down based on a bunch of different parameters, which we don't need to get into. But you know, proof of stake, right? With Bitcoin, people buy big computers, right? I'm still talking in caveman terms. They buy big computers, and those computers are generating them Bitcoin by running an algorithm, right? In proof of stake, it's not too far different, but instead of you having to go buy an actual machine, which you have in your house, you're able to like virtually create that machine by just like putting your ether into a smart contract, right? And that is your machine that is running the algorithm and earning you your yield. And that yield is getting generated from inflationary rewards as a incentive for people to stake ether. And it's also coming from transaction fees, not anymore, but like let's say MEV fees, but so simpler stake transaction fees, right?
Sure.
From when people are using the network, and you've obviously, most people probably have done a transaction. They pay a certain amount of gas. As of right now, that's actually getting burned, but they are still essentially getting their share of the network activity through other things that are happening with that transaction.
Sure. Getting to what people are probably most excited about, do you have a rough timeline for launch? When's this baby coming out?
Well, when is this getting posted?
It can be posted as soon as today.
Okay, well, I don't think it's going to go live today because we're still figuring out some stuff with Stargate, but this week, right? So, if we can put this out as soon as it comes out, and I think that'll be, today is the 29th, so everyone has that transparency. And I think as soon as we, I think as soon as we get stuff figured out with Stargate, which I was talking about originally with Layer Zero, we'll be live. It'll be operating. There'll be a website, and you guys can click buttons and
just let me know, and I'll post it when it's spoiler free. I don't know what the term is, or if there is a term, but I think
we can post it with the announcement, and it's coming out this week.
Okay, coming out this week, folks. What does that mean to you? Well, maybe it means it's a Wednesday, a Thursday, or even a Friday.
I didn't specify what year. I just said it was October 29th. It might be October 29th, 2023, maybe. Who knows what year it is right now?
2028? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
No one knows. So, that's exciting. I'm sure people are going to bombard you with a lot of questions as soon as you guys launch. I don't know if you manage community stuff, but, God help you. I'd like to kind of transition to more about you. How did you first get into crypto?
I have like such an uninteresting story when it comes to this question because
I like uninteresting.
It's the only thing I know. I'm not that old, and it's the only thing I've known since high school. And after high school, I went and studied blockchain development, literally, at like a college in my town. And then from there, I got an apprenticeship, like a normal job, but I just didn't.
You say that's uninteresting, but that is the first time I've heard
there wasn't like a magical moment where I paid someone for pizzas with Bitcoin. It's just since
everybody says,
the ICO era.
When I ask that question, everybody says, "Oh, I got into crypto at 2017, bought Bitcoin." I'm like, "Geez, I mean, why am I talking to you? Why aren't all you guys millionaires?"
Yeah. Well, I was a kid, so that's why I'm not a giga billionaire. But
it's actually very interesting. What year was this? When you did this course?
When that was in 2020. So it was like most of it was online anyways because of COVID. But yeah.
No, I mean that's still pretty early to be getting right into it. I mean, I'm surprised that there was a college you could go to even work on that.
Yeah, it's actually I think it's something. I think it's really important, like putting a lot of more resources as an industry towards, higher education. But that's a separate topic for another day.
That's an interesting thing. It's like something I've noticed is part of what I think I got into this industry kind of just getting pulled along. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a developer, but there is a lot of roles needed in this industry that it hasn't really caught up to other industries, especially tech focused ones. That there's big gaps as far as employment. If you can find someone that you can trust and is normal, ooh baby, you are attractive.
100%. 100, and you know, like higher education is like one of those. I say this as someone who didn't graduate university, but higher education is one of those like platforms you can when people are like really considering what they want to dedicate years of their life to, you can really use that as a platform to convince and sway people to like dedicate time to one thing or the other. And because of the lack of crypto awareness in schools, that's really like preventing people from, you know, taking that swing. Because
Yeah,
you
a
know
lot
it's
of
easy
people
to
have
tell
no
you,
idea it's
it's
an
easy
option.
to yeah, it's easy to tell your parents like I'm studying computer science in school. But when you stop doing computer science to start trading shitcoins, all of a sudden you're the reject of the family. But you know, hey mom, I studied shitcoins in school, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's very interesting. I can't imagine what an official class would look like, but it's an inevitability as time goes on.
Oh, it's
Unless
getting
the entire
there. There's
thing
a lot of, you know,
collapses.
there's a lot of these big delegates for a lot of these big DeFi protocols are, you know, lots of blockchain clubs and schools and stuff. So it's progressing.
No, I mean, you said it was uninteresting. It's one of the more interesting ones. Everybody else is like, well, not everybody, but most people are just like, I got in 2017 and I made a lot of money. And then I thought, okay, what else? I started my third company and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
decided to start my fifth, and it was going to be blockchain.
exactly. Yeah.
So
Oh,
no,
that's
I
more
like that. I like that. So you've been around a while. I say anybody who gets in around like 2021, 2022 even is still, you're still a hardened veteran considering how much time this seems to take. Like it feels like 10
yeah.
years, like 3 years.
Someone called me an OG last month, and I felt old. So
It's very fluid. I consider you an OG. I think it's, I don't think it's locked to a date. I
well,
think
when
it's
did you
moves.
get into the industry?
Actually, like really into a community stuff, it was like 2021. Before that, it was just
Okay, so
buying and selling things.
you're an OG also. It's not as
Oh,
an
thank
insult.
you.
You're an
Thank
OG
you.
also.
Hopefully we get member cards at some point.
Yeah. Well, we have to verifiably prove that you actually in the industry when you said you were, right?
No, I started doing a lot of stuff. It was weird. It's like, you just buy stuff and then you figure out, wait a minute, it's not just the value of the thing. There's a whole community. There's people working on this. I mean, this is a technology. And then it was just me thinking, how can I fit into it? Because it's something I'm passionate about. So yeah, I mean, if you've been around for like 3 years, like that's at least 10, 15 years in crypto time.
Yeah, for sure.
It like
Especially
feels
because it
like
never
that.
turns off. So yeah.
So, given we're both extremely experienced OGs, I mean, how do you see DeFi changing in the next 5 years?
Um, it's a good question. I think that the number one thing that's going to happen in DeFi now is a detour, at least over the next like 3 to 5 years. And that detour is the detour of going institutional first. I think the vertical as a whole hit a roadblock last year, maybe let's say, when the market just lost complete confidence in these projects that kept getting hacked, lots of regulatory unclarity, um, and in general was a big blocker for major liquidity providers to like come in and make markets that would enable retail to have a more efficient process than what they have in TradFi, right? Like a good example of that is like Robinhood, right? Like someone can just go probably like make Robinhood, but for crypto only right now, with the exact same UX and everything. But because of like the lack of institutional acceptance, both in terms of liquidity and from like a market perspective, in terms of what they can advertise and all these different things, you end up not having the same UX, even if the buttons are as smooth as the ones on Robinhood, right? And I think like a lot of people are going the wrong direction right now, where they're optimizing for account abstraction. Hey, you can pay gas in any token and all these things. Like I understand that they're very cool from a technical perspective, but I think from like a strategic perspective, a lot of DeFi projects take this pivot now into the institutional realm, where they can build more sticky liquidity with more partners that they can trust, and that in turn will improve the that in turn will improve the retail outlook on parking your funds in DeFi protocols, and will give people a fresh chance to really kick things off and start like truly decentralized, immutable protocols if that's what certain people are into. But like in order to get there, they need to be like certain winners that clear the road for these protocols to come in. Where in the original DeFi run, it was a bunch of cowboy capital that was just like moving fast and breaking shit, but then quickly like realized the glass ceiling was super low, because they weren't pulling in the right partners to like steer the way for what will end up eventually being like the Bitcoin or the Ethereum of like the DeFi vertical, right?
So when you're talking about working with institutions, what aspect of that is most important to you? What I mean is, do you mean legitimate use cases is what's going to be most important, or do you mean access to legitimate, trusted capital is most important?
I think it's a bit of both. I think like you on one side of the quadrant, right? You have like fully KYC'd TradFi protocols, right? A Robinhood or your like digital bank or something, right? And then on the bottom right quadrant, you have Aave and Maker, right? Maybe not Maker anymore, Aave, right? And Uniswap, right? And in order to like really bridge that gap, right, between like the amount of users that live in that top left quadrant and the amount of users that live in the bottom right one, right? There's this like, let's say the top right quadrant, right, which is like people who are enabling the same UX as Aave and Uniswap and all of these people, but have the institutional on-ramps set up so that people are, KYC'd, the regulators can start to understand the system a lot better. It's not completely commingled assets everywhere. And we're doing this right now with our institutional product IPXETH with Laser Digital and Galaxy Digital as well, where we're offering the exact same product that we're bringing to Flare. But instead of calling it FLRETH, it's called IPXETH, and it's custodied by a trusted custodian that people want. And your money comes in, it stays your money. It's not commingled with some other person, maybe from North Korea that you don't know. And this person is insuring your deposits and all of these things that people are like familiar with when they're doing due diligence on an investment, right? And in the end, the product that they're investing into is the exact same product as what we're doing on the retail side, but with all of these TradFi cushions around it, right? And if we can get people into that product, right, where it's like they want the DeFi exposure, but they need the TradFi rails, right? Then it'll be easier for us to bring adoption up of the retail product, which is immutable and all of these different things, because we were able to funnel capital in through a more recognized UX first, right?
Yeah, I mean the legitimacy issue is something that we're going to be struggling with for a while, and obviously the government regulation is not, or lack thereof, has not been making it easier to figure out, okay, what's the right thing to do? How do we make it look like we're not just a bunch of guys in the basement? How do we like make it look like we're actual companies? Because if you don't give us, clear ways to prove that we're legitimate, then we're all going to end up looking illegitimate. So I definitely understand what you're saying with that. Assuming this video comes out when you guys make your announcement, where can people on Flare learn more about Dinero?
We don't have the domain set up yet, so I do not have the UI. I do not have the link to the FLRETH UI, but you can learn all about branded LSTs, Dinero, who we are, what else we're doing, all of those different things on dinero.xyz. Cool, it's a good domain, easy and short.
Yeah, definitely great. That's a great domain.
And on there, you can anywhere you'd go to find links or docs, it's all pasted there. And then the same is true on our Twitter at Dinero_XYZ. That's where you can get like a constant stream of new information and updates that are coming out of the core development team. And
are you going to make a new Twitter specifically for Flare?
No, because this is like a product we're doing under the Flare name, right? So
okay. No, I mean it's a good move. It's a good move, yeah. So at Dinero_XYZ.
Yes, exactly. And you'll find stuff on the Flare Twitter, you'll find stuff on our Twitter, you'll find stuff on all the websites, and it'll be like a multi-party attack in terms of getting the word out there and letting people know what's up. So yeah.
Well, personally, I love parties where I can attack people. I appreciate your time, Sami. And if you have any last words or a closing statement for all the Flare people out there, this is your time to shine.
No, for sure. I mean, go check out FLRETH. By the time, like we said, this video is live, it should be live circulating. And on top of that, we have a lot of cool DeFi integration set up for FLRETH just to kick things off. Soon there'll be Oracle partners where you can eventually borrow against it and do all these funky DeFi things you want to do. And then I imagine quickly after a liquidity profile is built, tons of cool consumer apps will pop up that are using FLRETH. And all final words are basically saying don't just go to the website and check it out. You can use it right now on Flare across like a variety of dApps. So yeah.
Awesome. Very exciting. And thanks again.